Well, welcome back to the Unstoppable Freedom Podcast. I'm Jimmy Page. You have tuned in for part 2 of our southern border crisis with JJ Carrell, and you are in for a treat. We're going to get under the hood right now. We're going to talk about the humanitarian crisis that we are creating, that we are agitating at our border, and we're going to talk about some things that maybe we can do about it. You're going to want to stay tuned. Here we go. Okay, JJ, let's go. Let me set this up just by saying, we talked about in the first segment, we ended the segment by talking about the humanitarian crisis, the moral dilemma that we're facing because we're creating a slave class. Now, I have never heard that. And that makes me so angry because we paid a tremendous price to abolish slavery in this country, a scourge on our history. Mm-hmm. We did it. And now here we are intentionally, once again, through our border policy, we are intentionally creating another dependent slave class, and it's absolutely unknown. No one even knows this is happening, but we do know there's a tremendous cost and a crisis. So let me ask you this. The border, I've said it many times, the border is a superhighway for humanitarian crisis. And let's touch on point by point. Well, let's start with this human trafficking piece. Okay. The Sound of Freedom is a movie that just came out. It has, honestly, the fact that nobody knew this was happening is very disturbing because some of us have been in this space for a while, talking to people like yourself that are on the border. But let's talk about human trafficking and why our border policy is this superhighway for human trafficking, including child sex trafficking. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Let me just, I'm going to give you data, okay? Because I think data paints an incredible picture for your audience, okay? Let's start with the fact that under Joe Biden, he has arrested over 400 to 500,000, we call them unaccompanied alien children. These are toddlers, 1 year old, all the way up to like 17 years old. He has lost HHS. Think of Health and Human Services or like Child Protective Services, but on a federal level. So every time that we arrest a UAC, unaccompanied alien child, we turn them over to HHS. HHS has under congressional testimony has stated that they have, and this is their word, lost over 85 to 100,000 of these children, meaning they have no idea who they gave them to. They don't know where they're at. Thousands and thousands of those unaccompanied children were under the age of 5 years old. I am telling you, at the very best, these children are being labor trafficked. We're finding these children working in meat packing plants in Nebraska at 2 o'clock in the morning. My son just turned 12 years old. There's no way in hell I'm going to let my son work a job, any job, especially not at midnight in meat packing plants. So when we talk about the morality of it, why is it not okay and forbidden for my son to be exploited, but Jose from Guatemala, that's 14 years old, working in a meat packing plant at 2 in the morning, why is that acceptable? And then I said, this is the best case scenario for Jose. Yeah. The worst case is Jose's getting passed around sexually. And Sound of Freedom made a good point that I hope your audience can try to understand. And this is very hard to talk about because people get very emotional and freaked out about it. But if you stay silent and you don't allow yourself to hear it, you become part of the problem. You take a hit of cocaine or heroin, it's gone, right? I can't resell that cocaine that's in your system. But I sure in hell can and resell a 5-year-old 3, 4, 5, 7 times a night to let him be anally raped, to allow him to do oral sex to other men. The young girls, their vaginas and being destroyed, being raped multiple times a night. I know that's unpleasant to hear, and I don't find joy in it. But if I'm not going to say it in those terms, who the hell is going to talk like that? So I'm going to have to be the dirty guy that says it because America is immoral. Okay, let me give you some data. So now we have about 100,000.
And real quick, by the way, you said 85,000, but we know from history that our government is the number one source of information and disinformation, bar none. They are the purveyors of it. So we could say if they're admitting to 85,000, is
Double,
the number
triple.
2 times 85? Is it 5 times that? And it's infuriating, especially when you know that these kids, it's just random. We have no idea where they are in our system. Anyway.
No. So, but I want to touch on this. These are the people that we've arrested. Okay. We're not talking about the millions that absconded. So that this number of 85 or 100,000, dear God, that's the best case scenario, right? So how does this look every single day, or every single month? Every single month, between 5,000 and 6,000 more of these children cross the border every single month. Now, we have a thing called family units. Family units make up about 61,000 of the 256,000 that cross every month. Every month, 256,000 people are crossing, being arrested, and at least another 250,000 are absconding. So over 500,000 people are coming into America every single month. It's in the data. Look it up. Go to cbp.gov. So in these family units, in order to get a family unit, so let's take me as the Haitian man again. I'm a prior deport. I sold drugs and I beat people up and all that. But if I have a wife and a kid, the U.S. Border Patrol, under their policy, will not deport me. They just release me. They release criminals into our society. But I know that if I'm a deported felon, that I'll be deported again unless I have a family unit. So what the cartels do is they rent me my kids, my 5-year-old and 7-year-old. They rent me my kids. I get released. The cartels they have people on the north side, and they walk them back to the border and they re-rent them. Let me give you, I put this in my book, and I want your audience to hear this story because it was told by Tom Homan, who is an American patriot. He was the former acting ICE special agent in charge director under President Trump, right? President Trump, the greatest border president in the history of my career, bar none. Tom Homan goes in front of Congress and says, let me tell you a story that happened last night. He goes to the morgue in Texas, and he's consoling or trying to console a Nigerian mother and father that their 20-month-old little girl just drowned in the Rio Grande. However, after the autopsy was done, it was determined that the cartels had sexually abused the child in every orifice of her body for days, and she died. And Tom Homan said what I have said for a long time. This is happening right now. As you and I are speaking, it's happening south of the border all the way down to Panama. And I'm going to tell you something else that's going to make you sick. It's happening in DHS custody because we have these pods or cages that everyone railed against Trump that were built by Obama. But now Biden has it. It's supposed to hold 300, 400 kids. They're holding up to 14 to 1,500. So when you look at the data, this is indisputable data, Jimmy, that even left-wing organizations, the WHO, Refugees International, you name it, whatever, left-wing liberal stuff, they are saying between 60 and 80% of all women and children coming up to the border are raped or sexually abused. 6 out of 10, percentage? 6 to 80. So 6 out of 10 up to 8 out of 10. It's not even disputed. The left wing just accepts it as a fact. So if I take 1,000 kids and I jam them in to a 2,400 square foot cage, 1,000 of them, and I tell you 6 out of 10 of them have been raped or abused. So 600 sexually confused, sad, depressed, angry. So we're now having sex abuses happening in DHS custody, and we've been having them for years. Because as I just had lunch with a former colleague, and I said, tell me what it's like in Texas, because he was down in Texas, in these holding areas. He said, JJ, it was me and one other Border Patrol agent watching 2,000 people. He says, I can't do anything. Even if something's happening in there, I can't go in there. because they'll just kill me.
Yep.
When you look at the iceberg of illegal immigration and the corruption and treason, what you're looking at, where you can see above the water, is so grotesque, so insane. But I'm telling you, what you can't see below the water makes this look normal and moral. I'm telling you, and I tell your audience, we are seeing the destruction of the American immigration system to fundamentally transform America. And it's intentional, it's purposeful, and they're creating chaos and dissension and balkanization inside America that's going to permeate. We're seeing the manifestations of it right now, Jimmy, in the major cities. Yeah. And it is going to find its way to rural America, and then all hell is going to break loose.
Yeah. And it's all part of this destabilization process, right? This idea that we're going to destabilize communities, which is happening everywhere. And I think part of what you're talking about, first of all of what you just shared is so troubling as a father of, as a man of God who knows that this all could be prevented and stopped. And we have organizations like A21, like Victor Marx and his ministry. There's so many that are exposing exactly what you're talking about at the borders, so that we can stop it. But to watch the photo ops, we've been, 30 months, and we've had one photo op at the border with the current administration, which was an absolute joke. They removed the people that were homeless there. It's maddening when you know the truth. It's like knowing the truth about J6. It's like knowing the truth about all of these things that are happening all around you, and then you can't unsee the truth. But I think for me, you talk about this human trafficking. Obviously, this is happening. We're a conduit, a knowing participant in human trafficking now. We are a knowing participant and could stop it. Why isn't someone on the other side of the aisle jumping up and down about this? Why aren't we impeaching these treasonous leaders? It makes us all crazy because nothing seems to be getting done about it. And none of our elected officials are even barely talking about it.
Because they're complicit. This is a uniparty. There's nothing done. Let me give you an example. When you think about this, we've spent over $1 trillion, maybe $2 trillion in Afghanistan, Iraq, all that whole mess in the Middle East to secure their country and their border. We just sent over $150 billion to Ukraine. President Trump couldn't get $5 billion to build our wall. He had the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And those traitors, Paul Ryan, who's a disgusting human, and Mitch McConnell, who's bought and paid for by China, and he's a bumbling fool. Those two men stopped us from having the security. And when you hear the passion in my voice on this, because I'm angry, because I was down there when they wouldn't fund it. I was on the border. I was supervising men that got their heads caved in by rocks. We were getting shot at. We're fighting day and night to just secure the border, when the people that were supposed to have my back wouldn't fund me. They would fund Ukraine, but they won't fund me and my boys, my brothers and sisters that were fighting down there. And let me tell you something, and all your audience, that's a war down there. You have no idea what's going on down there. When President Trump came down that escalator and said he's going to stop the Mexican rapists, and they all went nuts, that's all I caught from first 10 years down on the border. On Tijuana, all I caught was rapists, murderers, drug dealers, pedophiles, you name it. That's all I caught. And I'm telling you now, by the millions, they're all absconding into America. And you're seeing it manifest in New York, Chicago, Massachusetts just declared a state of emergency. It's happening. And you're going to see a war. I think the very first place you're going to see the manifestation of extreme violence against illegal immigrants is going to be in Chicago. They diverted $51 million from the residents of Chicago and gave it to 10,000 illegal aliens and housed them in a high school or elementary school inside of a small neighborhood. And now prostitution, gang banging, they're harassing the residents. So what do you think is going to happen in gang war-torn Chicago when they've had enough? And this is just the beginning of it.
And so let's pivot a little bit on this, because I think this is where the rubber meets the road, right? First of all, we know the human trafficking, the drugs and fentanyl. we've recovered enough fentanyl to kill every single American 3 times over now that's pouring across our southern border, which, by the way, the source of that and the funding of that is through communist China, just to be clear about where this is coming from. And then, as you said, you spent your first several years just dealing with violent criminals coming across. There's one other piece of this that I think is super, super concerning to me, because we do have an enemy. We have a national enemy called the Chinese Communist Party. The latest reporting from Michael Yan, who is on the border, understands the geopolitical maneuvering more than anybody, said that there is a tremendous influx of Chinese military-age men coming across the border and disappearing within America. Tell us a little bit about that piece.
Okay, first, Michael Yan is an incredible investigative reporter. He's down in the Darien Gap, okay? And that's where all the Chinese nationals are coming. So for your audience to think of Panama, right, it comes down to kind of like a bottleneck. Well, there's migrant camps. And Michael Yan stumbled across Mayorkas down there in April 2022, looking at the land to build migrant camps. Our government used our money to build migrant camps to facilitate and further the entrance of illegal aliens into our country. That's treason. Again, that's treason. Secondly, Michael Yan reported on this, and I followed up on it on reportings on my Substack and in my book as well. We have seen a 3,000% increase of Chinese nationals. Okay. Now, you have to understand, when you come through the Darien Gap, it's all jungle. And because it's bottleneck, all the savages come out of the woodworks and prey on the women, children, rape, steal everything you have, except the Chinese. Strangely, the Chinese have a faster and safer route to get through Panama. Now, the drug cartels run everything. Nobody passes for free. So this new pathway has to cost the Chinese nationals an exorbitant amount of money. So somebody with exorbitant amount of money, meaning the CCP, is funding single adult male Chinese nationals. And what does 3,000% look like? It looks like over 14,000 of them have been arrested in FY23. We're only 9 months into it. We have 3 more accounting months. Now, again, that's 14,000 that gave up on the border. I have no idea how many of them crossed undetected. And you want to go further.
Right.
I believe that there has been thousands, not hundreds, thousands of terrorists that have poured across our border. We have arrested 125 and counting. 125, it's a new record in the Border Patrol. 125 known confirmed terrorists. Are you telling me, after everything I've told you about the border and how open it is, are you telling me that we are batting 1,000%, meaning every terrorist that crossed that border we arrested? Are you that gullible?
No,
are you that willfully ignorant? And the government's banking on you. No. Yeah, you are that stupid that you will just take it.
Okay. So you just hit on something really important, right? There's a lot of people now that are saying they think we're stupid. They think we're stupid. And they don't think we're stupid. They actually know we're stupid. That's how depraved this entire system is. They know that we're stupid, that we'll accept this idea that, oh my gosh, we've arrested 125 terrorists. Man, we're doing a great job. Wait a minute. That's just a number they're letting you know about that will make you feel better and maybe make you sleep a little better at night. But the truth is, it could be 5x, 10x, 100 times that number are actually coming across our border into our communities to destabilize and to create criminal activity all across the United States.
Jimmy, let me tell you something that really caught my attention when I always have conversations with all my former colleagues. We're kind of friends. But as I was writing this book, I was reaching out to a lot of ICE supervisors, ICE agents, DHS employees, as well as Border Patrol. And now you got to remember, I worked with these guys side by side, and I ran big units where we were arresting MS-13 gang members in the middle of the night. We were taking down El Chapo Guzman, Sinaloa cartel drug loads with all the henchmen. So it was violent and it was wild and it was scary, but we were never afraid. However, when I talk to these people now, do you know what I hear? I hear fear. These are men I sat at 2:00 in the morning taking down drug loads on the coast of California with 30 men, 5 of us against 30 of them, and we would rock their world and take them down. They weren't afraid of that, but you know what they're afraid of? And they tell me, and it's almost exact, and they don't even know each other. So this is what's shocking. All these guys don't know each other I'm talking to, and I'll wall them off so nobody can find out they're talking to me or who you're talking to. And they all say the same thing. JJ, I swear this is how the conversation goes. JJ, I can't even articulate the type of people that I'm letting walk out the door. And they always finish with this: I'm scared to death. I'm scared about everyone I'm letting go. I'm letting go violent criminals. I'm letting go people that I know that have terrorist ties, but I'm being told just let them go. It's
Unreal.
insane.
Okay, so listen, this is another thing that makes me nuts, right? Because at what point do our Border Patrol agents, and by the way, they are heroes, they are sacrificing everything to try and protect American citizens, and they get no thanks for it. They're demonized by the current administration. Our policy makes them just spin in circles. At what point do they say, I'm not going to release this person? I'm not going to do it. You're going to have to remove me. Or is that just fantasy? Like, it's not going to do any good. At what
fantasy.
Point
it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
It's never going to happen, Jimmy. Here's why. I'm going to tell you why. Most of these guys are been in 10, 15 years. They're looking 5 more years until they can retire and get their pension. They see the absurdity, and here's something else that human nature takes over. It becomes normal. The chaos becomes normal. So let me give you an example. I have these conversations with guys, and I'm talking to a guy from Texas, and he's a friend. He worked for me, more so like a colleague or a subordinate than a friend. And he says, I said, how was it today? And he says, it wasn't that bad. We only had 1,000 people, and we just released, a couple hundred. And I said, okay, hold on a second. Do you listen to yourself? Do you know what you just said to me? And he stopped, and to his credit, he goes, that's crazy what I just said to you. And I said, yeah, you become normalized to it in the day-to-day. When you're living chaos, you don't see normal, right? You just feel chaotic. And these men and women are just living they're trying to survive. They're clocking in and get me out of here. They know it's criminal. Let me give you an example, Jimmy. In my career, all the way up until Biden took office, do you know how many people that we arrested that we just released in society? You're going to zero. Okay. I was a supervisor. I had to sign off on this casework. Nobody got released. Nobody. Now we're releasing millions. So you're going to tell me again, as we get close to the hour being done, or 30 minutes, I'm going to ask you a simple question, Jimmy. If everything that I'm saying, and it's indisputable, that's the truth, indisputable. If you don't agree with me that it's done intentional to destroy America, then I want you if you're halfway intelligent and honest, tell me a rational reason why we're allowing millions of people to enter our country illegally. And I'm waiting.
Right. That's right.
Anybody tell me a answer, and nobody can, because I'm correct. I wish I was coming to you on your podcast. I wish Trump didn't get the election stolen, and I wish Trump was still president, because when Trump left, let me give you an example of how the border was almost secure. We were 9 months away from having a 100% secure border. 100%. His final days in office, I would get the 24-hour report from across the nation, northern border, etc. We were arresting 150 to 450 people a day. That's nothing. That's like one person crossing every 8 hours amongst 50 miles. It's like it didn't happen. The day Biden took office, over 5,000 arrests, over 4,000 getaways.
Unreal.
So you're telling me that this is not intentional? Are you kidding me?
It's manufactured, and
I come back to this, Jimmy. Well, and I have this discussion, and I have it. It's interesting on these podcasts. I'll go on a lot of times. I'll go anywhere and talk anywhere. I don't care if you're progressive left. And I talk to them and I ask them, and it's almost as if I can see the wheels turning in their head, right? They're like, oh my God, this doesn't make any sense. This isn't what they told me. And I know that I'm speaking honestly and truthfully, but I know the numbers that I'm saying are shocking, and I know what I'm saying goes 180 degrees against what the government and the media is saying. I understand that. I'm very aware of it. But I'm telling you the truth. May God strike me dead. This is what is happening. I'm not embellishing. If anything I'm doing, and I write this in my book, Invaded, my numbers are so grossly conservative because I don't want anybody to say you embellished, because I don't have to. If I use DHS data, it is damning on its face by itself. I don't have to embellish that they've let go 7 million people. I don't have to embellish. Look, daily apprehensions now are rising. They're now 8,533 a day. They're going to spike to 10,000 probably within the next 2 or 3 weeks. Now, a day. Wrap your brain around that. Every day.
And when you realize that what it's bringing, and you realize why it's happening, I think that's what's really troubling. And so let's pivot. One of the things that we're seeing now is every single major city. So, my headquarters is here in Colorado. We have a sanctuary city in Denver, which is absolute nonsense. They are being overrun. In fact, because of the strategy of busing or flying these illegal immigrants all around the country, many of whom are violent, many of whom are bringing drugs and crime. And at the very least, they're asking for free stuff. I mean, one of the things that we're seeing everywhere is they're demanding free stuff. This has never before happened in America, even with all of the illegal immigration, where a group of illegal immigrants will protest and shut down parts of a city demanding free stuff, including jobs, housing, healthcare, food, a monthly stipend, you name it. These people don't understand the American way. They didn't come here for America. They came here for what they're going to get. Now let's talk about this. We have every single major city being overrun by people who couldn't care less about America, couldn't care less about our values or our way of life, and are making demands of America. They're creating crime and chaos all over the country. What the heck do we do about this now? We've got Massachusetts saying they're in a state of crisis. No kidding. Who didn't see that coming? We've got New York City that says we can't handle any more illegal immigrants. None of this pain would have come to New York City. None of this pain would have come to Denver. It wouldn't have come to Massachusetts or any of these other cities had these governors not sent and transported them all around the country. What the heck do we do with it now other than mass deportation?
You let those cities burn. They wanted it. You wanted it, Denver. You wanted it, New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Orlando. You wanted it, right? And the misnomer is that everybody got bused there by Abbott and DeSantis. But the truth is, our taxpayer dollars paid for their airfare or bus fare because they wanted to go to New York or they wanted to go to Denver. Your mayor, who is a clown, and your governor's a clown as well. It took less than 1,000 illegal aliens to enter Denver for your mayor to pull the ripcord and bust them out. 1,000. Okay, let's look at this. New York City has 100,000. Massachusetts has 20. Chicago has about 50. DC has about 50. And your city, Denver, has 500, right? It's more, but 500 came. So we're looking at about 220,000. You're looking at 1 month's apprehensions on the border, less than 1 month, has totally destroyed major cities in the United States. Let me give you an example for New York. New York City is using, and please fact check me because it is so absurd, you're going to go, that's not real. Over 50% of all the hotels in New York City are shelters for illegal aliens. Half. Okay? That's New York City. New York City is projected to lose $4.3 billion this year in tourism, hotel, on and on and on. What does that look like in real life? Let's just take one hotel, Roosevelt Hotel, downtown New York City. It has 1,000 rooms. 1,000 rooms. Every room is packed with illegal aliens. And there are thousands of single adult males living on the streets in New York City with nowhere to go because there's nowhere to put them. For example, 100 prior
real
to...
quick, let me just interject. Let me interject on that. You're exactly spot on, because now I just heard of a strategy in New York to house them in Central Park.
Well, here's even better.
Central Park to a migrant camp.
Well, they've already taken over. I think it's like 2 large soccer fields where all the youth go. So now I have to house illegal aliens, and little Johnny and Susie can't play on the playground anymore. Let me give you an example of how absurd this is, okay? And I want you to put yourself in a normal American's life where they're struggling to make ends meet. And this was reported yesterday. A Venezuelan family, a man, the husband, was talking to reporters and said, well, this is really good. I like living in the park here under this shelter because my family went to the pool yesterday for 5 hours on Sunday, and we had a great time.
Wow.
And then I go work. And he said, they won't give me a work authorization document, so I go work on the table. I should make $40,000 this year, non-tax. So that's about $65,000. How do you think that's fair on any realm of reality? How? But why is it that we allow it? New York City, Listen to what New York City does. New York City was 100% capacity at their homeless shelters prior to this invasion. 100%, meaning all U.S. citizens, right? Now, over 50% of all the beds in these homeless shelters are housing illegal aliens. So what in the hell has happened to the other 50% of Americans that got kicked to the curb, are living under bridges? Why would you do that to your own brothers and sisters? We are allowing this.
It's unbelievable.
And you pointed out something I definitely want to hit on before I leave. You talked about France and Europe. What's happening there is going to happen here. France was on fire. They burnt down their largest library that had books from 1100. It was equivalent to our Congress, the Library of Congress. Burnt it to the ground. And the media ignored it. I had to sift through to figure out what the heck's going on. It was all single adult migrant men that were tired, hungry, homeless, and pissed off, and rightfully so. Do you think when I look at these videos and it's all these men, single adult military-age men sleeping on the street corner, you think they're going to not rise up? And do you think they're going to make a determination between the American elite and the average American? No. They're going to slaughter us all, or they're going to try to. It's going to happen. Mark my word. I hope I'm wrong, but I know I'm not.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's, I want to end this with, if we can, with a little bit of hope, and maybe with something that we can do about this. For the longest time, of course, I have based all of my votes based upon moral issues, issues of protecting life, many. And this is a moral issue. This has nothing to do with race. You have just dismantled this argument that we're racist if we want the border closed. No, we're actually humanitarians. We actually want people to be treated with love and respect. And we're creating an environment of absolute destruction. Is there something, a glimmer of hope in all of this? And what do we do as average citizens?
I don't know where the hope is. I'll just be very honest with you. As I've always been an optimistic man, but and I'm sure law enforcement did this to me, made me very pragmatic and realistic. More than anything, I'm a realist now. I see nothing that's going to change. The only thing that I see can change is Donald Trump gets reelected. That's it. You want to, and I'm not campaigning for him. I'm just saying I lived under that president, and he almost had that border completely shut down. And he has promised the largest deportation force in American history. You are going to have to systematically remove everyone from this country, build the wall, put the military on the border, shut it all down, penalize the nations that help them, and then you go through the laws and you clean them of all the loopholes, and then you make a system, a legal system. If it's 20 million, then it's 20 million, but it's done legally, lawfully, and orderly, to where not only is it, America has to be the number one recipient of everything that we bring in. If we bring you in, you have to accentuate the greatness of America. At the same time,
Yes.
as we bring guests into our home, you don't beat your guests when they come to see you at Christmas. You feed them, you house them, you give them opportunity to have hope and joy. You don't throw them in the slums and say, hey, Merry Christmas, enjoy yourself. No, you bring them in, you help them, and that's the American way. Then they become Americans. All of these millions of people don't want to be Americans. They want what we have. They want our freedom and opportunity. And as I write in my book, Jimmy, we should never, ever apologize for saying, these are my freedoms. My founding fathers died for it. My uncle and father served in law enforcement and military. They died for it. We own this, and we decide who gets that freedom and opportunity. So when you say, what's your hope? I don't have, if a strong, godly man does not win this next election, we will see a point where we don't never come back. You can't. Wow. We are now 1 in 6 people living in America are not U.S. citizens. If he gets another 8 years, or Kamala Harris or some other clown gets it, we're looking at 2 out of 6, half, 3 out of 6. It's over. There's no coming back from this. So I wish. Yeah. I'm frustrated and I'm passionate about it because I see it, Jimmy. America needs to stop looking at present day. And for God's sake, look at 5 or 10 years down the road and say, if this is still happening, what does our country look like? You don't have to be a rocket science to figure it out. It's very elementary, very sophomoric. It's easy to say, we cannot sustain this. We cannot.
Yeah. Well, and I think what you've done today is you've made the case that this is probably, if not the most important issue facing America and American freedom and liberty. It is. It's it's the number one issue that's facing us today, and it should be a big part of the way you vote. And then we need to hold people accountable. But I'm super grateful for you, JJ. Thanks for telling the truth. Thanks for exposing this at a level that each one of us needs to know. And thanks for keeping this a front burner issue and continuing to fight for freedom, man. I really appreciate you and admire you.
Well,
thank
you. And thank you for having me on. I find it's very passionate, but something I believe has to be dealt with head on. So thank you for your time today.
You bet. Thanks, my friend.